Hey gang, so I'm going to put together a little video here in order to help out those in my course who are using Unity and feel a little left behind or a little lost. I want to put together something here that is essentially the Unity side of what it is that we're doing in Unreal. And so I've got here the Unity Hub open. I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to go put this kind of where I want to set up my game here. So I'm going to go core and 3D. This is an 3D Project. And I'm going to go and call this barrels, which is the same name we're using inside the Unreal version of this. And then I'm going to go and change its location here. So I'm going to go to my D drive. And since I've never made anything in Unity before, I'm going to create a new folder called Unity projects where I could then keep all of my. So we'll go and save it there. And then I'm going to create the project. Now, when I'm integrating my assets here into the engine, I'm going to be doing this two different ways to show you. The first of which is to use the output from Substance Painter that was calibrated for Unity. The other version that I'm going to do is I'm going to use Unreal 4's packed version of the textures. And I'll show you how you can use either one when you're working in Unity. As long as you know what you're doing with these textures, as long as you know what the textures are. And granted, if I was going to be working in Unity, I would probably actually not use either one of these setups, but something a little bit more in between. So the first real big difference is what is called roughness in Unreal is called shininess in Unity. So what that means is that we need the inverted version of that map. We need the inverted version of that texture. We can't use a roughness map to identify what's shiny. It's showing us the invert. And so we're gonna flip that texture around. So if I was working here in Unity, I would have to make a shininess map, but I would also want to include the ARM, or the rather ambient occlusion. And this is a texture that's not actually included in the Unity output, and so that's a little bit of a problem there. Okay, first and foremost, I've got Unity open here, and I'm in my asset area here, and we're going to go and create a couple of folders. The first one I'll call meshes, and that's where we're going to put our static meshes. And the second one I'm going to create, we'll call textures. And then finally, I'll create one called shaders, where I'm going to put the shader graph and also add the materials. Now, it's worth noting that in Unity by default, pardon me, the shader graph is not actually turned on. And so that is my first item here in my agenda, is to go into the manager here and actually go and turn that system on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into packages, Unity here. I don't want stuff that's actually installed. And we're going for shader and not, we want the Unity registry, and try that search again, shader, and there's our shader graph. So we are just going to install this. This is going to give us, pardon me, this is going to give us access to the graph-based version of the material editor inside of Unity, which is a huge, huge strength of being able to work with textures and being able to work with materials. And so I want to make sure that I have this enabled. Otherwise, I'm stuck with Unity's default shader, which doesn't have a lot of ability beyond its native application here. So now that this is turned on, I should be good. So let's go and do a little importing. I'm going to go to my texture folder. I'm going to right click, and in here we can actually go and import into here. So I'm going to import new asset, and now I'm going to head over to my project folder. I'm going to go to projects, barrels. There it is there. And because I'm importing textures, I'm going to go into textures. Now I've got all of my Unreal versions of my textures here, and I'm going to bring everything in. but I've also created the ARM for Barrel 1. I've created the Unity version of this. So I'll show you both ways of wiring this up with the Unity texture, but also with the Unreal version of it. So we're going to go and import these, and they'll all come in. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to go and configure these to make sure that they're actually being compressed the right way, so that we're not losing any information and that we're not having files that are larger than they need to be. So I'm going to start with my default textures here. These are my base color textures, and the default texture type here is default, which is good. That means that those three images should share the same properties and should be okay. The next one I'm going to do is I'm going to head to my ARM, and I'm going to make sure that the sRGB is turned off on these. Now, this is going to allow me to use the red, green, and blue channels independently of one another. And so I'm just doing this for each of the ARMs, turning them off, and then selecting another image, and that should bring up the little apply window. The next thing that I want to do, let's go through our normal maps, and I'm going to go and set these to be normal maps. Again, hit apply on each one, just so that the software understands what these are and how it is going to go about using them. So that's good there. We can apply that. And then the last one we've got is our SM texture, which I haven't really yet. This is in our green channel, the shininess, and in the alpha channel, it's got the metallic map. This is the default version of a Unity texture type. So we're going to go and switch this to be sRGB off as well. Okay, so now that I have all of those put together and set up the way that I want them to be set up, we can jump on over to our meshes folder. And here I'm going to import as well. I'm going to go to barrels, FBX, and I'm going to import my barrel. Now there's going to be an error or a problem with the barrel when I import it. And this is something that when you work in Unreal is not a problem, but when you work in Unity, it is a problem. And what that is that there is currently no material here on this barrel. That means that when I exported it from the modeling package, that there wasn't a mirror material applied to it. And this is not typically a problem when you're working in Unreal, because Unreal realizes the poly groups themselves, how you've grouped together your polygons and their polygon IDs. That is what determines what material goes where. But Unity actually wants you to have a material here applied. So because this barrel is incorrect, because the way that I've put this together is incorrect, I'm going to show you the change that needs to be made inside of Maya here on this barrel in order to make it usable inside of Unity. We'll kind of expand on this a little bit as well in terms of what you would do if there were more than one material asset. Since this asset only has a single material applied to it, it's going to be a little bit simpler and easier to set up than where it's something more complex, an aircraft or something. So here we are in Maya. I'm going to import the same FBX into this project or into this file. There it is there, barrel. And we'll just frame it here. So again, there's no current material on this. And so in order to make this work, I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to go and assign it a new material. And I'll just choose the blend material here. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. And I'm going to go into the blend. I'm going to give it a name. This is going to be barrel M for material. And that's all I need to do. Now that there's a material assigned to this, when we export this as an FBX, I'm going to go to project and barrels FBX, and I'll just overwrite the one that's there. Now that that material has been applied, if you look at the difference here, you can see we only have just the geometry in the asset itself. We're going to go and delete this guy. And I'll import it now that it's set up correctly. And now you're going to see that we actually have a material that we can adjust in here. Now, by default, everything's all grayed out here. We can't go and change anything that's going on, but that'll change down the road. So this asset is now ready to go. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to go and create our shader graph and start plugging in our nodes and setting them up correctly. So I'm going to head over to my shaders folder. I'm going to right click, create, and I'm going to go to the shader graph, and we're going to go and create a lit shader. So this is under the built-in lit shader area, and I'll call this SG for shader graph underscore barrels. And this is what the shader graph looks like here in Unity. So we've got our outputs over here. These are the areas that we can plug various things into in order to get these set up correctly. And by default, we have some nodes already plugged in here, kind of changing the properties of this object, which is cool. And we've got a little preview over here. That way we can see what the material looks like kind of as we're playing with it. And we've got some properties over here that we can tell. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do, I'm going to right click, create a node. I'm going to go to input. I'm going to go to texture, and I'm going to go and get a texture sample 2D. So we'll just double click on that, and there's my texture sample. So what this does is it references the pixels in an image in order to output certain values. And so we're going to use this one as the base color. So right now you can see the base color is set up with this little gray box here. This is a color selection option that we have here, and it's defaulting to gray, which is why our sphere looks gray. And so that's cool. We can go and select the texture slot here too. We can do different this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the RGBA and I'm going to swap it out where that little gray box was. So in connecting that, pardon me, in connecting it in there, you can see that we've kind of removed that little gray box from existence, and we now just have our object. Here we can go and actually load whatever textures we want. I can go and grab my barrel base color, and you can see that that now applies itself to the demo object here. This is just a sphere that we're previewing our material on. However, I don't want this to be plugged in this way. I don't want to use this little drop-down node here, selecting what texture we're using. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click, create a node, and I'd actually like to go in and create something that we can use to swap these textures. So we want to have 3 different barrels, but still rely on one single shader to drive that. So here's what to do. I'm going to go to my input. I'm going to go to textures, and I'm going to scroll down to a 2D texture asset. Now this is a texture that we can find in our collection here. So I'm going to go and grab my base color, and I'm going to swap out that little base color node that was there. Now the reason for this is that the little base color node that was there is static. It means that that's always the texture we're going to use. And currently this object is static too. However, if we right click on it and we go to convert to, we can change it to a property, which now makes it editable during runtime. And we've got a name for it right here. It's currently called Barrel1BC. That's the base color name that node had. That's a pretty crappy node. So over here in the graph inspector, I'm going to go and give it a much better name. I'm going to call it base color. And now we've got a variable that we can edit here called base color, which is of type texture 2D. So that's going to allow us to change what base color image is in here. I'm going to go and minimize the texture sample here a little bit, just to kind of keep it a little bit cleaner and out of the way. The next thing we want to do is repeat the process here for our normal map. So we're going to right click, we're going to create a node, we're going to go into input, we're going to go into textures, and we're going to create our texture sample 2D. And in fact, while I'm at it, I'm going to duplicate that as well. Let's duplicate the right one. There we go. And we'll do the 2 of these ones together. So this is going to do, I'll do the ARM setup here first. I'll create a second shader to show you the other setup. So this one is going to be my normal map. So again, I'm going to right click. I'm going to create a node, which is going to be an input. texture, and then we're going to scroll down to the texture 2D asset. That texture 2D asset is going to be the normal map for my barrel one. And we'll just sub that out. There is now my normal map at play, and I can go and plug in the RGB value into the normal area. And then we'll minimize that texture as well. And now our normal map is in there and ready to go. Again, I'm going to select the texture 2D asset here, right click on it, and we're going to convert it to a property so it can be edited. We're going to select that thing and we'll give it a new name here, which is normal. If I can type normal, there we are. Okay, so that one's good to go as well. And now we have just but the bottom node here to set up. So we'll do the texture setup here first. So I'm going to go and create another input. I'm going to go into texture. I'm going to go and grab another texture 2D asset. I'm going to use the icon here to go and select my ARM app. Okay, so we'll select that and replace this. And I'm going to right click and call this, convert this to a property. And then we can go and select it. Give it a much better name here, which is just going to be our ARM. Ambient occlusion, roughness, metallic. So that's what we're getting out of here. ARM, or ambient occlusion in the red, roughness in the green, and metallic in the blue. So in order for this thing to work correctly, we need to replace these specific nodes here the right way. Ambient occlusion is in the roughness channel, or in the red channel rather. I'm going to go and sub that out. We're going to skip roughness for a minute because there is no roughness in here. Again, I'm using the Unreal packing, and so that means that I've got to do something a little special to the roughness. Here, I'm going to grab the blue, which is our metallic value, and I'll replace the metallic value. Now this is getting a little cumbersome to work with here. We're starting to get wires cross over each other. So I'm just going to click on the metallic value and drag it down until it's below the ambient occlusion, and that's a little bit cleaner and easier to work with. In fact, I'm going to move the smoothness down here too, because that's the next one we're going to work with. Now we need to invert what's going into the smoothness channel. So I'm going to pull out from this wire, and then I'm going to do a search for 1-. Excuse me. So the way the 1- works is, since each of these channels is some value between 0, meaning black, and white, meaning 1, this inverts our value. So if you were to think of how this would work here, and I'll go and draw a couple of examples on screen so you can see the way that this 1- actually operates. And we'll just bring our project window down a little bit here. So what we've got is 1 minus whatever value there is. So let's take, for example, 3 values. Let's take 0. Let's take, let's take a couple here. Let's do 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and 1. And let's put them all into the 1-. Okay, so that's the same thing as doing this. 1 minus this value. So 1 minus 0 is 1. So our 1- value here, 0, becomes 1. The same thing is true here. 1 minus 0.25 becomes 0.75. The opposite. 0.5 will remain 0.5. 0.75 becomes 0.25. And 1 minus 1 will give us 0. So there you have it. This is how the 1- works. It inverts values, as long as they're between 0 and 1, as long as they're normalized. And that's what we're working with here. I take this and I put it into the smoothness. This will give us the proper value for that channel. We can go and minimize this to make it a little bit smaller. Try and tuck it in here in a way that doesn't interfere too much. I might take the emission and go put it in below here to try and find myself a little more room. That doesn't. So we'll go So there you have it. There's the configuration here for using the Unreal Pact version of these textures. Okay, so that's going to set up that material to look kind of the way it should on here. So if we go take a look at this, our barrel should be behaving the way that it's supposed to. This is a good, and this is good, and this is good. Right. So the other thing that we want to go and set up here is I want to show you how we would do this if we were using the Unity Pact version of these. And so I'm going to go and grab another texture sample, set that version up. I'm going to go to input. I'm going to go to texture. I'm going to go to texture sample again. Texture sample 2D. Okay, so we'll grab one of these. We're going to go and grab another node, which is going to texture and our texture 2D asset. And now I'll go grab the Unity version of this. So that's this one. So here we'll replace that. And this now gets wired in a different way. So if I go and delete these nodes here, and we'll move the Unreal version of this out of the way. Here is now the Unity setup for this. And what we're going to do is, again, there's nothing in our red channel. Our green channel is our smoothness, and our alpha is our metallic. We can go and sub that out. Now, this is why I actually like to use the Unreal Pact version a little bit more, is that it gives me the ability to use that ambient occlusion node, which I don't get here. So with this done, we're good here. We can go back to our scene here so we can see this. I'm going to go back into my project folder here, and I'm going to create another asset. This one's going to be a material. So this material I'll call M_barrels for material. And what we're going to do is in this material, we can double click on this to open it up. We can go and choose what shader we're going to use in the inspector here. This is using the standard, which is the typical Unity shader. And I'm going to use the drop down, and we can go and look for different things here if we wanted to. And we can also grab our shader graph. Try that again, open this up. I'm going to grab the shader graph, and I'm going to drop it in that area. Now that seems like it's going to allow me to do that. Let's go in here, shader graphs, and grab my shader graph. There we go. That's going to give us the ability to now go and see our shader graph here at play on this material. The next thing that we want to do is let's go and save this asset so that our texture works properly. And let's go and apply this to our mesh. So I'm going to go into the mesh and select it here. I'm going to go into materials on this thing. And here's the barrel IM, or barrel material that we assigned inside of Maya. And I'm going to use the drop down here, and we can go use our materials here that we have at play. So the material we made was M barrels, like so. And we can put that on like so. And we can apply this to the barrel. And let's go and bring our barrel out and go have a look at it. So it looks like there's actually a couple of things going wrong here. We're not seeing the materials the way that they're supposed to be set up. It looks like there's a little bit of a problem with the way this is rendering. So let's go see if we can't figure out where that's coming from. Let's go back into our shaders here. And it looks like the material on the barrel here, our material that was made, is not currently correct. And so that's something that we're going to want to look at. Let's go into our shader graph, and we can see that the material is working here, which is good. We do have an error. It says POW FE will not work for -F. Use absolute F to handle negative. And so it looks like there is an error somewhere with a negative value. Let's grab that. And convert this to property. I'm just going to call this SM for smoothness and metallic. We'll save this asset. Looks like there's no compile errors here. But our preview of the material is incorrect. And so it is indicating that something is not working the way that we want it to. So let's see if we've got any properties here in our graph that we can go and play with in terms of making this look correct. So it is a lit material, which is correct. It is for an opaque surface, which is correct. We want to render the front face, which is correct. Fragment normal is tangent, which is correct. So all of this stuff looks okay. The material here in the preview, so there is something kind of funny going on with the shininess here that I have not been able to note. But we're definitely not seeing, this looks just chrome here. So let's go and see if we can't discern what's happening here. We're using this image here. So I want to go and check this default texture shape 2D texture type. Yeah, that looks okay. Default. Doesn't look like it needs to be anything else. Let's try our normal maps here and ensure that they are set up correctly. Advanced. And nothing needs to be set any different there. Not sure why this is actually not doing what it's supposed to do. Back into the shader graph here. Built-in, lit, opaque front. Yeah, all of that looks okay. Got a texture here. Is running the same way. So it is giving us the same. Let's delete these nodes here. Save it again. See if that changes anything on the material, and it does not. Let's try and reload it here. Shader graph. There we go. So now it's working the way that it was supposed to. So I just had to reload it in order to get it to read correctly here and do what it was meant to be doing. Now, there is still something funny with the way that it's being rendered here in terms of some kind of artifacting and weirdness on the material here. I'm going to try and pop into the old version. So instead of using the SM, I'm going to put this back to the ARM, and I'm going to go and use that texture here instead. We're going to save this again. In order to go and change this. Where's that one? Save again. I want to make sure that that error disappears. And then I'm going to need to open this up and wire it correctly. So again, A is for ambient occlusion. We need our 1- from the green, which is going to go into the smoothness. Minimize this to make it smaller. And then I don't need the value from the alpha. I need it from here. Let's go and save this asset. So we're still getting something of an interesting effect on the barrel here. This kind of swerve curve that's happening here. I'm going to go and troubleshoot this by checking the export settings in Maya. I have a funny feeling we're going to go export selection over the barrel. I want to make sure that in my export settings, let's actually look at the settings this time. I want to make sure that my smoothing groups are on, which is important. And yeah, that looks like it should be everything. So it was set up correctly. Go back to our scene. And there's definitely something going on with the normals here. In terms of the way that they're facing. I can see that the normal maps are not behaving the way they're supposed to be. Let's go take a look at our normals here. So they do appear to be working correctly. I'm going to try swapping this to a regular image and see if that changes anything. So it didn't. It absolutely did not. Don't put that back on normal map. Apply this again. 2D. Correct. Go to advanced. So yeah, all of this actually appears to be looking the right way. My normal maps look correct here, but I can actually see there's issue with the barrel everywhere. None of the normals actually appear to be lined up correctly. I know my UVs are set up correctly because the rest of the textures appear correctly. Let's go see if there's something we can change in the ARM. Mayhaps it's the ARMs that are set up correctly. Let's go and delete these. That shininess is still there. Let's break the normal. Yeah, I think it's something to do with the normal. Oh, that was not set to be normal. Yeah, I don't want that in the emission. I want that in the normal. That's what was broken. There we have it. Okay, so ambient occlusion is correct. This is my smoothness, and blue is my. So that's what I messed up. We're going to go and save this asset here again. And now we should actually start getting this thing to render the way that it was meant to. I'm going to make sure sRGB is off on that. It still doesn't look fantastic here. So there's still something amiss with the way that it's rendering here. Let's go into our materials. It is looking good here. I'm just going to check my shader graph again that I didn't wire something incorrectly. Okay, so this is indeed the ARM texture. Default is correct here. Again, that material looks fine here, which is why it's bizarre that it does not look good here. Let's go open up our properties. There's our textures. Oh. Let's do this. Delete that. Look up. There it goes. So I had inside of the material, I had an additional ARM. This is because I was switching back and forth between the two versions. And so there you have it. Now I've got it set up correctly. The material is rendering in world the way that it was rendering inside of Substance Painter. So that's what I'm most interested in, is getting that set up. Now, each of these textures here means that we can go and run these, change these at runtime, and we'll be able to change what's being displayed on top of these barrels in terms of their look. So if I go and swap out the normal in ARM, Here for this one, you'll see that we get a different look to this barrel. And if I go and grab this one and this one, this one will get yet a different look to this barrel. And so that is the beginning setup of the system we're going to create. So the idea is to make these properties that we have here, our surface inputs, these are the things that we're going to control once we get into our shader graph. And so there is now one-to-one making these things appear like Painter. So we've got them brought in here. We've got a mesh folder containing our mesh with our material applied to it in the material tab, right? This is using our shader graph from here, which is good. We've got our shaders. We've got our shader graph, which is wired all up like this. I'll leave this here. Again, I'm using the Unreal version of this here in order to make this work. And then our textures have all been imported and set up correctly in regards to the whether or not to use the sRGB or whether or not they are a normal map. So once all of that is set up, everything is good to go. Everything is good to be saved, and we can move on to the next step in the process. So I hope this has been helpful. I know I kind of stuttered there a little bit at the end. Again, with the inclusion of this video, I am actually under 4 hours in the engine here for the first time, and so it's going to take me a little bit to find my sea legs, as it were, as I'm not a Unity user. And so anyway, I hope this does help in getting your materials together and getting them set up in a way that we will be able to manipulate them real time during the creation of our project. Okay, I will talk to you again in class, and enjoy the rest of your week.